I never expected a simple bottle of cologne to completely change my relationship with my roommate, but that's exactly what happened last month. Let me take you back to how it all started. I've been living with Alex for almost a year now. We met through a mutual friend who knew we were both looking for a place, and it seemed like a perfect match. Alex is the kind of person who lights up a room when he walks in, tall, with these incredibly expressive hazel eyes that crinkle at the corners when he laughs, which is often. He's got this effortlessly tousled dark hair that somehow always looks perfect, even when he's just rolled out of bed. I've always appreciated his easygoing nature, the way he can strike up a conversation with anyone, while I tend to be more reserved, more calculated in my interactions. Our apartment isn't anything special, a modest two-bedroom in the city with a small living room and a kitchen that barely fits both of us at the same time. But we've made it our own. My side of the living room has my books neatly arranged on the shelves, while Alex's side is more chaotic, with his guitar propped against the wall and various mementos from his travels scattered around. Despite our different personalities, we've fallen into a comfortable rhythm over the months. We cook together sometimes, watch movies on our beat-up couch, and have these deep conversations that stretch late into the night. There's always been this easy camaraderie between us, a friendship that felt solid and uncomplicated. At least, that's what I thought. You should know that I've always had this thing for scents. I wouldn't call myself a collector exactly, but I do have a rather extensive array of colognes lined up on my dresser. There's something about the way a good fragrance can transform your mood, can become part of your identity. I've spent years curating my collection, finding scents that speak to different parts of who I am. My favorite is this niche French cologne with notes of cedar, bergamot, and a hint of vanilla. It's subtle but distinctive, the kind of scent that doesn't announce itself when you enter a room but lingers in the memory after you've left. I usually save it for special occasions, job interviews, first dates, moments when I want to feel particularly confident. Alex had commented on my collection before, usually just passing remarks about how many bottles I had or asking what occasion warranted which scent. But I never thought he paid that much attention to it until that evening. We were getting ready to go out to a friend's birthday dinner. I was standing in front of my mirror, adjusting my collar, when I felt Alex's presence in my doorway. "That's the one I like," he said, nodding toward the French cologne I had just sprayed. "The one that smells like forests and something sweet." I was surprised he had noticed, let alone remembered it specifically. "Yeah," I replied. "It's my favorite too." There was something in the way he was looking at me, a curiosity I hadn't seen before. He stepped into my room, which wasn't unusual. We respected each other's space, but weren't strict about boundaries. "What makes it your favorite?" he asked, coming closer. I found myself explaining the composition of the fragrance, how the top notes fade to reveal deeper, more complex scents underneath. "It's like getting to know a person," I said. "The first impression isn't the whole story." Alex was listening intently, and I felt a strange flutter in my chest at his undivided attention. "Can I try it?" he asked, and I handed him the bottle without thinking twice. It was a simple request, one roommate to another. But what happened next shifted everything between us. Instead of spraying it on himself, Alex looked at me with this mischievous glint in his eyes. "I want to see how it smells on you," he said. Before I could process what was happening, he stepped closer, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Time seemed to slow down as he raised his hand, the bottle of cologne held delicately between his fingers. I stood frozen, watching as he aimed the nozzle at the side of my neck. When he pressed down, the cool mist hit my skin, and I instinctively closed my eyes. The familiar scent enveloped me, but it felt different somehow, charged with a new energy. Let me explain why this moment matters so much in retrospect. There's an intimacy to fragrance that I hadn't fully appreciated until then. Scent is personal, primal even. It bypasses our rational thought and speaks directly to our emotions, our memories, our desires. Having someone deliberately apply a fragrance to you, that's crossing into a territory of intimacy that friends don't typically explore. And yet, there we were, in this moment that felt both innocent and laden with unspoken tension. When I opened my eyes, Alex was still standing close, his expression a mixture of concentration and something else I couldn't quite identify. "It smells different on you than it does in the bottle," he murmured, his voice lower than usual. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The air between us felt charged, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. And then, without warning, Alex leaned in closer. I felt his breath against my skin a split second before he inhaled deeply, taking in the scent from the very spot he had sprayed. His nose brushed against my neck, and I felt a shiver run down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool air of my bedroom. Time stood still in that moment. I was acutely aware of every sensation, the soft sound of his breathing, the slight pressure where his face was close to my neck, the rapid beating of my heart that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. My mind was racing, trying to categorize this interaction. Was this normal between friends? Between roommates? The lines were suddenly blurry, and I found myself not wanting to step away, not wanting to break whatever spell had fallen over us. After what felt like both an eternity and not nearly long enough, Alex straightened up. Our eyes met, and there was a moment of recognition, of acknowledgement that something had shifted between us. His pupils were dilated, making his hazel eyes appear darker, more intense. Neither of us spoke right away. What was there to say? How do you put words to a moment that defies the boundaries you've established in a relationship? It's even better up close, Alex finally said, his voice slightly rough. He cleared his throat and took a step back, creating space between us that felt both necessary and disappointing. Thanks for letting me try it. The mundane words felt at odds with the intensity of what had just transpired. I managed a nod, still trying to process the riot of emotions coursing through me. No problem, I replied, the phrase absurdly inadequate. We both tried to act normal as we finished getting ready to leave for the dinner. But there was a new awareness between us, a hyper-conscious attention to each other's movements. I caught Alex looking at me in the reflection of the hallway mirror, his gaze quickly darting away when I noticed. I found myself wondering if the cologne was too strong now, if everyone at the dinner would be able to smell it, would somehow know about the charged moment it represented. The dinner itself was a blur. I went through the motions of socializing, laughing at the right moments, participating in conversations, but my mind kept returning to that moment in my bedroom. I was seated across from Alex at the restaurant, and occasionally our eyes would meet over the candles and wine glasses. Each time, I felt that same flutter in my chest, that same question forming in my mind. What did this mean for us? You might be wondering if I'd ever thought about Alex this way before, if there had been signs I'd missed or ignored. The truth is, I had always found him attractive. That was an objective fact, like acknowledging the sky is blue. But I had compartmentalized that attraction, filed it away as irrelevant to our friendship and living situation. Now, though, memories were resurfacing, taking on new significance. The time Alex had fallen asleep on my shoulder during a movie marathon, his weight warm and comfortable against me. The way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I was engrossed in a book, a gaze I'd peripherally noticed but never examined. The casual touches, a hand on my shoulder, fingers brushing as we passed dishes at dinner, that perhaps lingered a moment longer than necessary. When we returned to our apartment that night, there was a tangible tension in the air. We moved around each other carefully, like dancers following steps to an unfamiliar song. Want a nightcap? Alex asked as he headed to the kitchen. It was our usual routine after a night out. One last drink before turning in, a chance to decompress and talk about the evening. I agreed, following him to the kitchen and leaning against the counter as he poured us each a small measure of whiskey. As he handed me my glass, our fingers touched, and neither of us pulled away immediately. About earlier, he began, then paused, seeming unsure how to continue. I took a sip of my drink, the burn of the alcohol a welcome distraction from the intensity of the moment. It's okay, I said, not even sure what I was okaying. Was I giving permission for what had happened? For what might happen next? Or was I trying to restore normalcy, to reassure him that our friendship wasn't damaged? Alex shook his head slightly. No, I want to say this. He set his glass down and looked at me directly. I've been wanting to do that for a while. To be that close to you. I just never knew how to bridge that gap. His honesty took my breath away. It was like he had opened a door I hadn't even known was there, inviting me to step through into a new reality where Alex and I could be more than just roommates, more than just friends. Why now? I asked, genuinely curious. What made today different? Alex smiled, a small, almost shy expression that I rarely saw on his usually confident face. The cologne was an excuse, he admitted. I've noticed how it makes you feel more confident, how you stand a little taller when you wear it. I wanted to be part of that, to get closer to that version of you. His words resonated with something deep inside me. He had seen me, really seen me, in ways I hadn't realized. We talked for hours that night, standing in our kitchen with our whiskey long forgotten. We talked about the moments we had both felt something more than friendship, the times we had both pulled back out of fear or uncertainty. We talked about what it might mean for our living situation, for our social circle. We acknowledged the risks, the potential complications. But beneath all the practical concerns was a current of excitement, of possibility. When exhaustion finally caught up with us in the early hours of the morning, we parted to our separate bedrooms. But as I lay in bed, the memory of Alex's face close to my neck, his breath warm against my skin, played on repeat in my mind. The scent of my cologne still lingered in the air, now forever associated with this turning point in our relationship. The days that followed were a delicate dance of new awareness and established routines. We still did all the same things, shared meals, watched TV, went about our separate lives, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation, of unresolved tension. Small touches became more frequent, more deliberate. A hand on the small of my back as Alex passed behind me in the kitchen, my fingers lingering as I handed him his morning coffee. We were testing the waters, seeing how this new dimension to our relationship felt in the context of our everyday lives. A week after the cologne incident, as I've come to think of it, Alex knocked on my bedroom door one evening. When I opened it, he was holding the bottle of cologne, a question in his eyes. "I was wondering if I could borrow this," he said. "I have a job interview tomorrow." I nodded and reached for the bottle, but instead of taking it, Alex stepped into my room. "Actually," he said, his voice soft, "I was hoping you might help me apply it. I'm not sure I know the right spots." My heart raced as I took the bottle from him. This was a deliberate echo of our previous encounter, but with the roles reversed. Now I was the one stepping close, feeling the heat of his body as I raised the bottle. I sprayed a small amount on one side of his neck, then the other. The familiar scent filled the space between us, but it transformed as it mingled with Alex's natural scent, creating something new and intoxicating. Without thinking, I leaned in and breathed deeply, just as he had done to me. I heard his sharp intake of breath, felt the slight tremor that ran through him at the contact. When I pulled back, his eyes were dark, focused entirely on me. "Is that how it's done?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We stood there, suspended in the moment, neither of us willing to break the spell. And then, with a gentleness that made my heart ache, Alex reached up and cupped my face in his hands. "I'm going to kiss you now," he said, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. But pulling away was the furthest thing from my mind. I nodded again, and then his lips were on mine, soft and questioning at first, then more insistent as I responded. The scent of the cologne enveloped us, binding this moment to the one that had started it all. That kiss changed everything and nothing. We were still Alex and me, still the same people who bickered over whose turn it was to do the dishes and who stayed up late talking about life's big questions. But now there was this new layer to our relationship, this depth of connection that made every interaction richer, more meaningful. It's been a month since that first moment with the cologne, and our relationship continues to evolve. We're taking things slowly, mindful of the fact that we share not just our hearts now, but also our living space. There have been awkward moments, of course. The first time our friends noticed the shift in our dynamic, the conversation about what happens if things don't work out. But there have also been moments of pure joy, of discovery, of wondering why it took us so long to see what was right in front of us. The bottle of cologne still sits on my dresser, but now it's something we share. Sometimes Alex wears it, sometimes I do. And sometimes, like that first night, we use it as an excuse to get close to each other, to breathe each other in. It's become a symbol of our relationship, complex, evolving, with depths that reveal themselves over time. I've always believed that scent is powerful, that it can transport you to different times and places, can evoke memories and emotions with just a single breath. Now I know it can also transform relationships, can be the catalyst for crossing boundaries you never thought you'd cross. Every time I catch a whiff of cedar and bergamot and vanilla, I'm reminded of the moment everything changed, of the courage it took for Alex to bridge the gap between friendship and something more. As I reflect on this unexpected turn in my life, I'm struck by how often the most significant changes come from the smallest moments. A bottle of cologne, a curious question, a breath against skin. These seemingly insignificant things can alter the course of a relationship, can open doors to possibilities you never imagined. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes you have to pay attention to the subtle signals, the unspoken communications that pass between people. Sometimes the most important messages aren't conveyed through words at all, but through actions, through presence, through the willingness to be vulnerable. Alex and I are still writing our story, still discovering what we can be to each other. There are no guarantees, no certainties about where this will lead. But I do know that I'll never look at that bottle of cologne the same way again. It's no longer just a fragrance I wear to feel confident. It's a reminder of the moment I was brave enough to let someone truly see me, and the moment they were brave enough to show me how they felt in return. So if you take anything away from my story, let it be this. Pay attention to the small moments, the quiet gestures, the unspoken communications. Sometimes the most profound connections begin in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes, all it takes is the courage to lean in, to breathe deeply, and to acknowledge the chemistry that's been there all along. Total _char_count, 17,827.